Hello and welcome, I'm Min Kobayashi, and I felt like this gothic chair might be like slightly more in tune with this kind of thing than a bunch of books. And I have a confession to begin with, and that is that I like some trashy shows, and probably my most egregious crime would be Vampire Diaries and the franchise that it spawned. So back a few years ago, I have two friends that were in the army that were debating about which vampires they liked best, and I just had to kind of figure out why these guys were so invested, which began my journey into watching all the Vampire Diaries in 2017, right before the finale came out, and then last year when Legacies was announced, I binged the entire series in 6 days and then watched the finale a few days later when it came out. I was sick at the time, so that's why I was totally able to watch that much television in 1 week. It is probably my most terrible offense. Because I am an avid fan of it, I think that it's good to discuss it now that Legacies Season 1 has completed, and my thoughts, kind of where my comparison between series and how I like different parts differently, and I thought it would be cool, and then talk about my thoughts on the finale as well as going forward. So to begin with, I must say that one of the things that I think is lacking most in Legacies for me would be the fact that it's not centered around brothers. Brotherly love and platonic love is my favorite kind of thing to watch and read. And even though many people would probably be like, well, obviously the series garners a lot of attention for epic love stories, but that's, as much as I shipped some of the couples, that's never what drew me intensely to it. It was from the first episode of both series, there's this intense relationship between the two central men, and that always captured me. And that's not something that is apparent in Legacies. I'm not sure necessarily if they're going to have that. I think that they're kind of trying to create that between Landon and Raphael, maybe between Lizzie and Josie, and maybe even MG and Caleb kind of allude to it. But even though we've had 16 episodes, and of course I've watched much more episodes of the one, but even in the first season, Damon and Stefan had so much more development, they had so much more relational things, and of course they knew each other so much more. And even humorously enough, I wasn't a huge fan. I liked Claus enough. I wasn't a huge fan of Elijah, and I did not like Rebecca at all going into originals, which is why I didn't originally watch it. However, even by the end of the first season, I loved their relationships so much, and it really angered me to the show. And that's not something that I feel. The relationships are not as deep. Even the relationships, well, especially, I loved the relationships throughout the series, whether it's Rick and Damon. I love their relationship, and that was one of my saddest things as the series went on, that their relationship became less focused. Even Damon and Bonnie, one of my favorite relationships of all time, they're such an intense one. And throughout the series, my favorite episodes often were the ones that were centric on Damon and Stefan, especially the flashback episodes, because I loved how we got to see the journey of their development, how they became the people they were. Even like Matt and Jeremy, or Jeremy and Tyler, their relationship was good. Josh was one of my favorite characters in the originals because of his strong friendship. Even Marcel and his relationship with the Michelsons, I adored all of them. And that's something that I'm really hoping will be driven more into, and I think that throughout, I liked the originals as a series because it went from being a sequel and having a lot of the core things but making itself its own. And Legacies, it has similar characters, it has that, but I just don't feel as anchored to it. It doesn't feel like a continuation. It feels like a rebirth in a very interesting direction that I'm not a huge fan of. Actually, around that was humor. Some people I know said that Legacies is actually funnier, and I was like, Damon is one of the characters that I find funniest ever. In the first season, I think one of the things that sold me was the whole conversation between Damon and Stefan. Their relationship is hilarious, and as much as it's tragic and great and it made me cry, I had a first day of a job after I watched the finale and I was literally sobbing based on how strong their love is for each other. But they're hilarious, even when they like pretend to be one another and those things, and I just feel like the characters don't know each other, and even though they have pre-established relationships, almost every single person in the series, other than Raphael and Landon when it comes to, except for with Hope, has a pre-existing relationship, and the two of them have a pre-existing relationship. There's no one entered into the series that doesn't know each other, or at least one character, and yet they all kind of feel like weird little places. And I really love the grittier thing too. Maybe that's because I also found Claus hilarious, especially in originals, and he was also really depraved. I wasn't a huge fan of Monsters of the Week. The Vampire Diaries has a very lovely occasion of doing chapters in which a villain takes over a few episodes, and I just found that with the fact that Monster of the Week, they were going to be killed at the end of the episode and nothing really went in. It kind of, you started fresh each episode, and I didn't love that. I kind of wanted to have a villain that was more than just a minion, to have someone that allowed you to get to know them and care about the villain and to have these, and I just wasn't a huge fan. Having cool new nature and having more original villains that are outside of trying to figure out what else to make in vampires and whatever was cool. I like that. I just wish it had been like one of them that was a villain. Random Industry, not my favorite. I just think that, yeah, it takes away the gravity. We don't have a lot of super emotional scenes going into the next episode. Everything's wrapped up, and there's sometimes we cry, like when Joe comes back or things like that. It's just, there wasn't a lot of continuation throughout the next episode. I think a lot of this is the fact that I'm less impressed by just the way battles go down as well, because they're witches, and witches are cool. They've always been my least favorite of all the things. I literally skipped through like Bonnie's scenes sometimes and the other witches because they just don't interest me as much. But MG is the only vampire in the cast, and he's often sidelined. I would say that he gets the least amount of really recognition in most of it than any other character in the main cast, and that's sad. I kind of want more from him. I think vampire abilities are super cool. We don't really see them ever being used. We have a few occasions at the beginning of the season where we see compulsion, but that's it. You don't even really see them move fast, and it just makes it for a less exhilarating show, I think. And even the witchcraft, it's not cool stuff. It's mostly just like fly or whatever. And yeah, I also really wish we had more time in class. We're out of school, which is so cool, and the thing that I like about Hogwarts is that it uses the kind of that time to dive into the history and things, and mostly it just is a place for why all the students are together. Do we really even see classes? It's been a while since I watched the first few episodes at the beginning of, or like October of last year, but at least for the while we have not seen a single class in session, and it's just like, what are we learning? Can we learn cool stuff? Can we develop? But no, okay, random monster we don't really care about is going to be killed at the end of the episode. Going back to where I said that the flashbacks were my favorite part of the episodes, and I think that is really crucial to the point that I loved being able to see the history and the bonds. And there's something that Julie Plec, one of the creators, says, the fact that, you know, that this is not a love story between a 75-year-old vampire or a 1,000-year-old vampire, and I think that's cool, but I still think that it's missing the history. And along with that is, there's 13 seasons that came before this. There's 8 of the Vampire Diaries and 5 of the originals, and it's kind of, I think, expecting that we've watched all of that, but I'm assuming a lot of people haven't watched all of that. They're like, go, watch 13 seasons before you come here, and a lot of things aren't explained or dived into, especially as they could be different now. You know, it's been in the world almost almost 20 years? Can we learn about like how MG was turned? Can we learn something about Lizzie and Josie's past? Because we don't know a lot. From what we see in, you know, they're in Vampire Diaries, but they're just basic little girls. Like, they say cute things and they go on their way, they siphon something. Nothing is really known of their personalities. I would say that even I was watching clips and I was like, Lizzie's not being super dramatic, Josie's not being like shrink back, like they didn't have an idea of their personalities. Now we're able to. Could we have some times of what their life has actually been like? Especially like Rick and Hope's relationship, which isn't really alluded to at all and now is super important and strong. And that's supposed to be kind of, I think, the relationship that kind of grounds the show. And yet I don't feel like they have a strong emotional bond there. Like, I know they have their fight scenes and they talk about things and she rebels, but I kind of want more other than just kind of trust and judging respect. It's just not what I don't know. Like, Elena and him, like, they were friends mostly, but they had a good friendship. They had good banter. They got along great, but she respected him and looked up to him, even though she probably could have done it on their own. And I like that. And him and Jeremy, you know, he was never super like, I'm putting myself high above you, but he was a good role model and a good relationship with them, even though he drank too much. And I don't see that as much now. Everyone's getting it on. Wow. Also, cool reflection. So Raphael, is it 3 weeks? Because it's within the month, right? Raphael has his girlfriend die, then he kisses Josie, has sex with Lizzie, and is now having dreams and, you know, thinks about kissing Hope. And it's like, holy crap, man. Kind of let's go away from the epic romance and kind of more into like horny teenagers, but I'm like, can we also have them have good relationships that develop? Like, Caroline had a host of significant others. Because she pretty much has relationships with every male in the main cast. It's crazy. Like, she begins the show with having a sexual relationship with Damon, and I know that is his worst sin, although it is very clearly evidenced that she likes him, even though there's compulsion and feeding and stuff like that going on, and that is a thing that I can never forgive him from, even though I like how their relationship is redeemed and they're able to show them, even at the end, you know, when they're brother and sister, and that is really important to me. Also, that scene at her mother's funeral. I love, there's a beautiful video with him talking about what he said to her in the first season versus at the funeral, about how incredible she is. And I think that that's one of my favorite things of growth, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's the story that I love. Anyways, what I'm saying is Damon, and then we get Matt, and then we get Tyler, and then we get Rick, I guess, first. And like, her and Rick have an interesting relationship, but it's very alluded that like Rick likes her and, you know, loves her even though, you know, she's mostly doing it out of duty. And then we also have Stefan and Klaus. So was that six main characters? Like, she has lots of romantic things, more significant relationships than every other person in the shows. And yet, she's able to be humanized in that, because those relationships all are meaningful. And other than, you know, the Damon one, but, you know. But Raphael has 4 in the first 10 episodes. It's like, holy crap. And I think I'm sad because of that, because I want to be able to have those platonic relationships that are built on that. And it's like, when you go through the entire cast, it's kind of hard on that. Also, talking about romance, like, I can't say that I'm a huge shipper of the whole Hope Lyndon. Like, they have some cute moments, but they're not, I don't feel like they have that great relationship. Can we have some, like, Hope and MG? I just really like MG. Maybe that's it. Now we're gonna start talking about going into the next season, and that would be, I'm really super excited for more superhuman people to be at the school. Like, are we gonna get Gorgons? Because that would be cool. Can we just have cool things like that? And I think that would open the world up huge. Caleb is the MVP of the season. He's the most significant arc in the whole series, which is funny because he's a random recurring character that isn't that important to the actual plot. And yet, his relationship with Rick is one that I like better than his relationship with Hope. He has a good relationship with MG, And his conversation with MG about finding a family in the car after MG kills Landon, I think is the scene that hit me the most. And maybe it's because, you know, hashtag Paul Wesley directed that episode, but a lot of the things have just really fallen flat. It's mostly because I don't know why they're embracing the whole, like, Lizzie is completely selfish, because I don't like characters like that, and I don't think that people just want to be that kind of person in real life. And I think that I'm forgetting about it, but Josie has had some emotional seasons at the beginning, and I think that Penelope has the most emotion in Eddie romance than any of the others. However, I'm missing a lot of that emotional emphasis, and that scene where we have Caleb, who doesn't value other people's lives at the beginning of the season, to him being a minor character and yet being like, no, kill me. And I really like that. I'm super excited to see kind of the show without Hope as we've seen it before, because of the fact that she's such a central character, although I don't know how anyone remembers all the gaps, because of course she's so significant. And obviously she's not going to stay forgotten, blah blah blah, but I'm still excited to see how that avenue continues. I thought that MG was super cool, although his mom's acting I just didn't super love. Like, it felt so weird, like, I don't know, and kind of corny, but I did really like that he finds out his legacy, and that's horrifying to find out that his legacy is to eliminate the things that he thinks he is. And I did really like his relationship and his conversation with his dad and his revelation of that more. I wish that we had reflected more on that psyche and kind of him dealing with being a murderer and all of that. We don't, and I really am excited to kind of see what him being a ripper and exploring that. I wish that it gone deeper in that area, you know? But I'm still really excited. I kind of really want a spin-off where we just have the Greasley family. Like Preacher and Mayor, which I don't think pastors go into politics normally, but maybe. I don't know. You know, history of vampire, supernatural, hunter, legacy, and vampire. Like, cool family dynamics, you know, like that kind of hit the clock kind of villain. Is that what it's called? You know, where they all kind of do villainous works or different things, but then they come home and they live together. I think that'd be a really cool spin-off. I think that a lot of people have said it's more grounded because it's less over-the-top dramatic, but I'm missing the grounding in Mystic Falls. I don't think we've been to Mystic Falls Grill, really. We've never really been in Mystic Falls other than a few times when it just seems way over the top, like they're just making fun of it. That's kind of like, people don't care that much in high school. Like, no one's gonna be like, oh yeah, you rich people, let's make fun of you. No, I just want them to kind of go to Mystic Falls, you know, compel someone to give them scotch and have a drink, maybe flirt with someone, maybe kill someone. Wow, I got dark there. But I want to be able to see them with humans because I love the interaction of humans and vampires. It's one of my favorite things. Even though I liked the later series more in Vampire Diaries because it focused more primarily on Stefan and Damon, rather than with Elena kind of gone. However, I miss the fact that they, you know, evacuated Mystic Falls for a bunch of that, and I was like, why? I like the interaction. Is the council still there? Also, why are none of these people being mentioned? Can we have like a Fell or like a Lockwood or someone? Are they all dead? Are they all dead? Are none of the founding families still alive? Like, I feel like there's just random branches of all over them. Like, they have a lot of generations to reproduce. There must still be a council. That'd be cool. Please have them back. Like, their legacies. Can we have, like, a name drop of, like, Always and Forever? And, like, these other things that were so important to the actual story, and yet I don't feel like these themes are being continued on, and I really miss that. Also, Stephanie Salvatore was name dropped, and I really want to see that. I know that she's still probably like too young, but you know, Vampire Diaries doesn't like super care about age because, you know, Rick should be in his 50s at least, and he's played by a 40-year-old actor. And then we have like Jeremy and Matt, who their actors are also, you know, only a year older than the last time they portrayed them being 10 years younger at least. More steady villains, I think that's really important. I don't think that Monster of the Week works very well. I don't think it grounds it very well. Can we have a little bit more death maybe? I am good with sacrificial lambs. I think that is good to make it gritty, make some recurring characters. They don't really have recurring characters, like we have Caleb and Penelope and like Emma and Dorian, but I don't, like, Emma was taken out and Penelope was taken out, so we really only have Caleb and Pedro, and I really don't think they're gonna kill that little kid. That'd be sad. Like, we just started seeing witches in the finale, but like, had we seen these people before? No. I just wish they had other smaller named characters in it. I think that would make it feel more alive and like a school, more grounded, and yeah, also better music. The soundtrack to Vampire Diaries and Originals is so good, and the soundtrack to this is just not super great. More emotions in general, I think that it's really lacking. It's trying to be like funnier and lighter, but I feel like it just comes off as more superficial to me. And I'm sounding really judgmental. I do like enjoy it. I'm looking forward to season 2. I think that Eddie's season normally builds on more emotional depth, and I'm hoping that will happen. And I'm hoping we will get to see more of that. And a little bit more narration would be totally cool with me, by the way, because I love that. And also more epic speeches, because that's always cool too. And more history. Let me know what happened to these people. And please, more vampires. Anyways, that is my long talk about my thoughts on Legacies Season 1 and just the Vampire Diaries universe as a whole. Anyways, goodbye and thank you for listening.